All through the night, the ship skimmed over the dark, whispering sea, slicing through the water as neatly as a hot knife through cool butter. By sunrise, the coastline of Pylos stretched before them, and there upon that level shore was a great and loud party, all busy in honor of Poseidon himself. The air was thick with the smell of roasting oxen, the smoke rising toward the sea god's vast watery domain. The rituals were drawing to their close as Telemachus and his companions brought their vessel up onto the sand. "Now courage, my boy," said Mentor, catching the flicker of nervousness in Telemachus's eyes. "You know why we are here. You know who you must speak to. And there, yes, there, do you see him? That tall, straight-backed figure, still standing proud as a mast, though he has seen more than a century pass. That lad is Nestor, son of Neleus, wisest of the Greeks, friend and counselor to the kings, and incidentally, quite a legend in his own right."
Telemachus had, of course, heard of the great Nestor of Pylos, but being a homebred youth with only the faintest hint of diplomacy about him, he lingered awkwardly on the edge of the crowd, his tongue quite unwilling to participate in speaking. Mentor, with a patient sigh that somehow carried both fondness and exasperation, took him firmly by the arm. "What? Still tongue-tied? Good heavens, lad, the man's not going to eat you. Well, unless Uncle Poseidon has a particularly eccentric menu today. Come, come, heaven itself has marked you for great things. And besides, it would be very bad form to keep a man of Nestor's age standing about waiting," he laughed. Mentor's casualness about the encounter, even calling the great sea god Uncle Poseidon as if he was just another guy, gave him a little courage. With that, the reluctant youth was propelled forward toward wisdom, counsel, and, possibly, the first real diplomatic conversation of his life. They approached the place where Nestor, the grand old man of Pylos, sat among his sons. It was a scene of cheerful industry. Knives flashed in the morning light. The aroma of freshly roasted meat drifted across the sand, and here and there the glint of gold and bronze caught the eye. A feast in honor of Poseidon himself. No sooner had the company spied the newcomers than they bustled forward in a hospitable wave, ushering the strangers to seats of distinction. Soft fleeces spread invitingly upon the level sand, like the most luxurious picnic arrangement imaginable. A youth, broad-shouldered, bright-eyed, and almost exactly Telemachus's contemporary, stepped forward bearing a cup made of gold with nicely smelling wine, the good stuff clearly being brought out for particular guests. Into Mentor's hand he placed the cup. "Welcome, friend," he said, lifting his own cup in salute. "Join us in our prayer to the Lord of the Sea. This is his feast, and you have come at a most favorable moment. And when you have prayed, pass the cup to your young companion. He has the look of someone who has been brought up to devotion and proper respect for the gods." Mentor, always the master of form, offered a traditional blessing upon their hosts and petitioned the great Poseidon for fair winds and favorable outcomes. Telemachus, taking his cue, repeated the prayer as well as he could. "Blessed be the winds and the Poseidon in the sky, I mean of the seas, or of the sky, of Mount Olympus, and good winds, and the sun above. And must our wonderful hosts be blessed with wine and gold. Lots of it." Telemachus looked towards Mentor with hopeful eyes, who just laughed at his well-meant attempt. It was nice, though, he thought, to feel part of something larger than his own anxious thoughts. Then the business of eating began, as serious and devoted as the earlier rites. Platters were cleared, cups drained, and satisfaction spread across the gathering like the sun creeping over a field. From across the festivities, a young girl had been sending discreet glances towards Telemachus with bright, curious eyes. She seemed to glow, though the sun was already shining on her.
Her hair, long and flowing, caught the light as though it had been polished with gold. Her eyes, oh gods, her eyes, were as calm and deep as a summer sea. Her skin seemed soft as fresh cream, and her cheeks were brushed with a blush like cherry blossoms. Telemachus felt a ping to his heart, as if Eros himself had struck him with an arrow. At last she walked straight up to him and beamed a smile so dazzling it could have lit the whole place. "Hello," she said. "I'm Polycaste, daughter of Nestor. And you are?" Poor Telemachus' heart gave a sudden stumble, and for a ridiculous moment he quite forgot who he was. He stammered, as though his own name had slipped out of his head entirely. He was about to answer when Nestor, peering at his guests with the sharp, judging gaze of a man who has known 100 campaigns and 100 more intrigues, repeated the question that had been simmering since their arrival. "Well now, tell us, who are you, and why have you come? Merchants, perhaps? Messengers from the gods? Or wait, are you the more romantic breed, sea-roving adventurers, the kind who bring danger in their wake?" He laughed.
Telemachus, warmed by meat, wine, and the old king's evident goodwill, spoke up with a confidence that would have astonished him the day before. He explained his mission, the search for news of his father. "Concerning the other Greeks," he concluded gravely, "we at least know how they met their ends. But my father's fate is a mystery, and neither my mother nor I can find the answer. By your friendship with him, I beg you, tell me everything, and do not soften it from pity or kindness." "Ah, my dear young friend," and his voice, for all its age and gravitas, trembled like the strings of a harp touched by a sudden wind. "You have stirred a beehive of memories. Sweet in places, yes, but with stings enough to leave a man sore for days. You speak of Troy, and in doing so you summon back the whole dreadful theater of memories. Dangers on land and dangers at sea, tiring years of siege, nights without the sweetness of sleep, days with battle after battle. Troy, ill-fated, fire-gutted Troy. It was a tomb for many brave Greek warriors. There lies great Ajax, stubborn as granite. There lies peerless Achilles, all golden fury and terrible grace. There lies Patroclus, and," the old man's eyes clouded, "there lies my own son Antilochus, swift of foot, strong of arm, and dearer to me than the breath in my lungs. But come, let me look at you. Yes, are you truly the son of Odysseus? No, I needn't even ask. When you speak, it is as if he himself were leaning close, sharing one of his cunning schemes. Aye, cunning. None could match him in the art of plotting the downfall of an enemy, or in turning the most hopeless entanglement into triumph. We were comrades in all things, mind, heart, and purpose, throughout the long agony before Troy's gates. But my boy, when the war was done, the gods set misfortune upon us faster than a man can draw breath. First came the arguments, bitter and ugly, between the two sons of Atreus. Agamemnon insisted we stay at Troy, to calm the fury of Athene with sacrifice, he claimed. But we all knew that in reality, for him, Troy was just the entrance to a land with enormous potential. Endless lands to grow, maybe even copper and tin, some of the key elements for bronze, and Hector's strange iron. It can break your swords, he claimed, trying to scare us. Iron, what heresy! But for his brother Menelaus, the war truly was about getting his wife Helen back. He argued for instant departure. I, for whatever reason, decided to follow Menelaus. The son of Nestor, Pisistratus, opened his mouth as if to say something, but decided against it. So we set our sails for Tenedos. And Odysseus? He came with us,
Aye, for a while, but at Tenedos he turned back to the coast of Asia. Odysseus, Nestor continued, was also curious about the iron of the Trojans. They said the Titans had hidden it under the mountains. Pisistratus interrupted his father. It's true, father. There is lots and lots of iron beyond Troy. The blacksmith told me, if you sacrifice 2 pregnant goats to Hephaestus during a full moon and add wood soaked in enough olive oil blessed by Athene to Prometheus' fire, Hephaestus will let you shape it into anything you want, even swords that can pierce through shields. Rubbish. When the gods throw their iron at us, it is already molded. How will you make swords from that? But Dad, it actually—
Nestor rose his hand. Enough! Molding iron. It's just for kids' toys, not for swords and useful items for adults. Let me continue. Anyhow, with the strong-willed Diomedes at my side, I pressed on. We made our course from Lesbos, took the waters straight across to Euboea, and there, after pouring out the due offerings to Poseidon, never wise to leave that fellow out of one's travel arrangements, we struck due south. At Argos, Diomedes and I clasped hands in parting, and I kept my ship pointed homeward until I beached her safe and sound here in Pylos. And so it is, young sir, that I cannot tell you from my own eyes what befell the other Greeks on their homeward courses. Only scraps of rumor have drifted my way, whispers of misfortune and of triumph. But of Agamemnon's fate, that black chapter, you must have heard the tale for yourself. Murdered in his very home, in the place where a man should feel safest, by the treachery of Aegisthus and his own wife. And yet, what Aegisthus did in villainy, Orestes, Agamemnon's son, repaid with sword and fire. Happy is the father who has a son so resolute and loyal. And, if I do not misread you, happy too will be Odysseus in his heir. Yes, said Telemachus when the old king had spun out his tale. I have heard the song of that vengeance, and glad would I be, glad beyond telling, if my own hands could dish out the like upon the vermin who gnaw away at my mother's peace and gorge themselves on my father's goods. Ah, you've jogged my memory, Nestor said, leaning forward. I have heard of your plight, how those crows have made a feast out of your house. But lad, do not sink beneath despair. Who can say? Odysseus may yet walk through that door and make them drink deep of the cup they have poured for others. I saw it with my own eyes at Troy. The favor Athene showed him, plain as a beacon in the night. If she extends that same grace to you and yours, then mark me, anything is possible. I have lost faith in such a miracle, Telemachus sighed, shaking his head. Even for a god, kicking out those suitors from my mother's home would hardly be possible. Now, what is this weak talk? You have no faith, broke in Mentor, who until now had been content to let the conversation run its course. Better a man is delayed on his homecoming than to return and fall beneath the knife of treachery like Agamemnon. No, my lad, Odysseus's ship will turn homewards in time, even if he now sails at the edge of the world. Telemachus only shook his head. I respect the optimism, but I myself dare not keep such hope. Turning back to Nestor, he added, Tell me more of Agamemnon's end. Where was his brother Menelaus when such treachery occurred? And how come the sleazy Aegisthus, no lion among men, could slay one far mightier than himself? You put the question well, Nestor said, fixing Telemachus with a keen sea-grey eye. Menelaus was far, far away, or else the story would have ended with Aegisthus being flung to the dogs before his dinner had even cooled. Indeed, had Menelaus not been delayed on his road home, that scoundrel's flesh would long since have been picked clean under the open sky, and not a soul would have wept for him. But here is how the sorry business fell out.
While we were wearing our bodies thin and staining the ground red at Troy, Aegisthus was at work closer to home. No sword, no shield, but with a weapon far more treacherous. A tongue skilled in dripping poison. Day after day he bent his whispers into the ear of Clytemnestra, Agamemnon's queen, sugaring his villainy with false sweetness.
For a long while she stood firm. She was, you must know, a woman of sense, and Agamemnon had been careful to leave her under the watch of a minstrel, a loyal soul with a lyre in his hands and duty in his heart. But Aegisthus, laid hold of the poor man, carried him off to a lonely island, and left him there for the vultures. Thus, cleared of his one obstacle, the jackal had his way. Clytemnestra yielded, and he carried her into his own hall. As for your question of Menelaus, that is a tale with a grim twist of its own. He and I left Troy side by side, our ships cutting the same bright track through the wine-dark sea, until we came as far as Sunium, where fate struck. There, Apollo, with the same calm hand he uses to pluck a harp string, loosened the handle that hit Menelaus's helmsman who held their course in the head, struck him dead where he sat. So, Nestor continued, Menelaus stayed there, paying due honor to his fallen comrade, as a noble man must. But the gods had not finished with him, not by a long stretch. When at last he set sail, the heavens turned spiteful. A fierce and unrelenting wind burst upon his fleet, scattering his ships as a child scatters toys from a table. Some vessels limped into Crete to crouch beneath her cliffs, while Menelaus himself, poor devil, was snatched up by the storm and borne far, far off to Egypt. There he lingered many days, fated to idle in a foreign land, though idling for Menelaus meant amassing huge amounts of gold and marvels. Now, lad, you see it plainly, why Aegisthus was free to do his filthy work, and why he kept his ill-gotten crown so long. 7 years, mark you, he squatted in the throne of golden Mycenae, grinding the people beneath his heel. But in the 8th, the 8th was his undoing. When Orestes grew up, young but sharp as any blade, he came home from the exile his stepfather had sent him on, and struck him down in the full bloom of his villainy. And as the irony of the gods would have it, exactly on the day his mother was buried was the exact same day his uncle Menelaus arrived back to Sparta, fresh from Egypt and glittering with treasures. Far and long had Menelaus wandered, too long. But you, my dear boy, must not do the same. Leave not your home at the mercy of those wolves who now swarm about it, or you may return to find nothing left but gnawed bones and ashes. But Menelaus, him you must see. Who knows what news he gathered in his adventures? He has sailed over stretches of sea that not even the fastest bird could span in a year. Go to Sparta. My chariots and horses are yours, and my son shall drive you. Thus will you go swiftly and surely to your father's friend. And so they talked, Nestor spinning one tale after another, full of daring escapes and far-off adventures, and dropping little nuggets of wisdom he'd collected in his many, many years. Time slipped away without anyone noticing, until the sun was sliding down the sky and touching the edge of the sea. That was when Mentor got to his feet and said, "We'd better be off. Night's nearly here, and tomorrow we've a long road ahead." "Oh, don't rush away just yet," said Nestor, holding up a hand. "Stay a little longer. Share a bite to eat and a drink with us. And when you're ready to rest, you'll sleep under my roof. The gods forbid I should let guests like you curl up on a damp deck in the night air, like beggars without so much as a blanket. No, no, may I never be thought to be so mean or so poor as to treat friends that way."
"You speak truly," said Mentor. "Telemachus will stay as your guest tonight. But as for me, please excuse me. I have much to do. I will leave Telemachus in your hands. Look after him well, and send him on his way when the time comes." As he spoke, everyone's eyes were on him. And then, just like that, he was gone. In his place, a great sea eagle rose into the air, beating its wings, and flew off towards the golden sunset. For a long moment, no one said a word. Then, Nestor broke the silence. "Great things lie ahead for you, my boy," he said to Telemachus. "If such company walks beside you so early in life, that was no ordinary man. It was Athene herself, mighty daughter of Zeus, who held your father in the highest honor. Be kind to us, O Queen. May your blessing fall upon me and my house, and in your honor I will offer a year-old cow. I'll sacrifice her to you," Nestor promised, "and I'll even cover her horns in shining gold." With that, he led the way to his home, and Telemachus joined him and his sons in the great hall. A huge bowl was brought out, filled with wine that had been resting for 11 years, kept only for the most honored guests. They drank deeply, offered a prayer to Athene, and then parted for the night. For Telemachus, a bed was made up on the porch. At first light, Telemachus found Nestor already awake and busy, giving crisp instructions to his sons. One was sent to fetch the cow. A prayer was spoken. The axe-bearer stepped forward and struck the cow squarely on the head, just behind the horns. As the animal crumbled, the women let out the high, wailing cry that marked a sacrifice. The men lifted the head, and Pisistratus cut the throat cleanly. When the last shiver of life was gone, the cow was skinned. Strips of meat were taken from the thighs, wrapped in fat, and burned on the altar for the gods. After the sacrifice portion was given, the rest of the meat was sliced and set to roast over glowing embers, the smell of the feast filling the air. The radiant Polycaste, youngest daughter of wise old Nestor, drifted over with a plate of steaming meat. She placed it before Telemachus and gave him a smile that was just a little too dazzling for comfort. Telemachus, desperate to look nonchalant, slapped the meat onto a slice of bread and took a bite so enormous it might have fed 3 men. "Would you like a bath while the rest is cooking?" Polycaste asked lightly. At this, Telemachus nearly inhaled the bread whole. He coughed, spluttered, and went a rather impressive shade of crimson. A bath?" he croaked, staring at Nestor as though begging for rescue. The old king just twinkled back at him, clearly enjoying the boy's torment. "Yes, I mean, sure, absolutely. I'd love a bath. Baths are wonderful." Before he could come up with anything more sensible, Polycaste had taken him firmly by the hand and swept him off. In the bath chamber, she set about washing him and then massaging him with olive oil, while poor Telemachus sat stiff as a board and red as a setting sun, trying not to expire from sheer embarrassment. By the time they returned to the hall, he was squeaky clean, slippery as an eel, and still blushing furiously. The others welcomed them back with cheers, and soon he was swept up into the feast, dancing and laughing as though he hadn't nearly choked to death over a piece of bread. After a while, a huge chariot was brought round. A fine pair of horses was led under the yoke, their flanks shining in the morning light. The mistress of the house appeared with a basket packed with wine and delicious treats and set it carefully behind the seat. Telemachus climbed up into the chariot beside Pisistratus, who gathered up the reins with easy confidence. He raised his whip, ready to set the horses running, when a soft voice called out behind them. "Wait," said Polycaste. She stepped forward and slipped a delicate necklace from around her neck. Holding it out, she said, "Here, take this." Telemachus smiled as he reached for it. Their hands touched, and for a moment neither of them seemed in any hurry to let go. His fingers brushed against hers, gentle, uncertain, lingering longer than either had meant. Then at last Polycaste withdrew, turning quietly back toward her chambers, while Telemachus tucked the necklace safely away, his heart beating rather faster than before. The remaining farewells were called, a few last blessings exchanged, and with a sharp crack of the whip, they clattered under the echoing gateway, out into the streets of Pylos and away. That night they found shelter at the home of a family friend. At first light, the journey continued, the road climbing and twisting through rough hills. Great shoulders of mountain loomed on either side, until at last the land opened into a wide valley thick with golden fields of corn. By the time the sun was setting, the travelers reached their goal, drawing up before the grand gates of King Menelaus, the man whose wife Helen was kidnapped by Paris of Troy, which started the Trojan War. That King Menelaus, and his wife Helen.